You can have the best aim in Valorant, but still not make it past the lower ranks. In my opinion, game sense and decision making are just as important as having good aim. Sometimes, it might even be more important, as someone with good game sense will be able to put themselves in favorable positions that might not require good aim to begin with. Hi guys, this is Egwick, and today I'm going to teach you how to make better decisions and improve your game sense in Valorant. If you like this video, please consider subscribing for more quality Valorant content in the future. Now let's get into it. When making decisions, you generally need to think about two things. First, the probability of a play succeeding, and second, the effects it'll have on the round. This is something that a lot of higher ranked players think about subconsciously, and there are a lot of factors that affect these two elements, but I'll get to that in a bit. As a general rule, before making a play, I like to think about what will happen if I pull it off, and what will happen if I fail. In most cases, you're going to want to make the optimal decision. However, that doesn't mean that the suboptimal decision won't work, and just because something works doesn't mean that it was the optimal choice. To illustrate this better, here's a simplified example with complete information. Let's say I know for sure that an Opper is watching top mid on Ascent. I only have a Ghost, but I still want to peek him. I need to weigh the risk versus the reward of this play and the probability of success. The probability of winning this duel is low because it's an operator versus a Ghost. Now, weapons don't dictate everything, but they do influence a lot. You could win this situation if the enemy player misses his shot, but this peek is heavily in his favor. The effect of me winning the duel is mid control, which is really great, but if I fail and die, the round becomes a 4-on-5 situation and I would have offered no value to my team. This means that all my utility for the round, the info I could have provided, or the potential of killing an enemy player is all lost because I chose to make this play should I fail. So based on the probability of success, which is low, and the most likely effect on the round, which is my death, this is not the optimal play to make. However, this is a very simplified example that removes a lot of factors, and it's not going to be that way in a real game. In almost all scenarios, it's never going to be that simple. You're not 100% sure that an Opper will be posted by mid. There might be two people with rifles, or they might have used a Sage Wall to block it off. Either way, you're almost never going to have complete information. So in making these decisions, you're going to have to make an educated guess based on a bunch of factors. I'll try to verbalize them as articulately as I can, but there's a lot of hidden depth to these factors, so I might miss a thing or two. First, let's discuss economy, or what guns do they have. At the start of each round, you can check how much money the enemy team has and predict what gun they will buy. Knowing what guns they can buy will determine how to play out the round, as they, and you too, will want to abuse the effective range of your weapon. A lot of players in lower ranks don't understand the concept of effective range, but in the simplest terms, you just want to be playing to your weapon's strengths. So if you have a shotgun, then you want to be taking closer engagements, and if you have a rifle or operator, then you want to be taking longer ones. Here are some quick numbers that don't factor in ability cost that can help you predict what the enemy team will buy. These are the bare minimum for the big purchases, but you also need to check if one player can drop the other. While it might not always change the outcome of the round, knowing what guns players can buy will be a big factor in improving your game sense. Next, let's move on to tendencies. Or, where do people like to play, and what are the things they like to do often? Over the course of the game, you're going to realize that some players like to repeat certain things. Maybe one player loves to peek mid at the start of each round, or maybe the enemy team is always forcing buys. The most common thing I see is that certain players will play the same angle round after round, and you should be capitalizing on that. Being observant of your opponent's tendencies can help you make better guesses, which leads you to, more often than not, making better decisions. This factor isn't as measurable as the others, but it's still an important one. For example, even pro players won't clear certain angles anymore because there's a strong tendency that nobody is playing in that spot. This is also why off angles can work. Because players don't usually check these angles, they can catch enemies off guard. The next factor you need to be aware of is abilities and ability usage. Valorant is complex because of the number of agent combinations you can have in a single game and the different ways each agent can use their abilities. You need to be mindful of what's been used and what hasn't been used so that you can play around it. The most glaring example of this is playing around ultimates. If you know that a Raze has her ultimate available, it might be a good idea to spread out and not rush a site. You also need to look out for agents with strong post-plant ultimates like Sova and Brim. But this isn't limited to just ultimates. We've all seen how strong post-plant molly lineups are, or any other lineup for that matter. It's a little hard to go in depth with all the abilities present in the game right now, but generally, tracking what's available and unavailable and making decisions off that is a great start. Next on the list is angle advantage. Certain angles are more beneficial for one person than the other. How line of sight works in Valorant is that if you're closer to a wall or an object, the person farther away is going to see you before you see them. With this in mind, it'll be a lot harder to have success when peeking these types of angles. If you're playing against a one-way smoke, peeking through the smoke or pushing it will lower the chances of success by a lot. But since we're on the topic of smokes, more often than not, smokes can give a big hint on where a player is going to be playing. On post-plant, if an opponent smokes out a certain area, they're most likely not going to pop out of that smoke. Aside from that, you also need to take spawn barriers into account. Certain angles will be beneficial to defenders because they can reach those areas first. Going back to the simplified example, that angle is beneficial for the AWPer because he gets to hold it before I have the chance to peek. The last and final factor is performance and tilt. Knowing how well you're performing and how well your enemies are performing is something that you should consider. If I'm feeling good about my aim in a certain match, I'm going to take riskier peeks because I know that my aim is on point. It might not be the most optimal decision, but sometimes you just feel like you can out-aim people. Conversely, targeting someone who is having a bad game is a great way to get easy rounds. If you know that their A player is 0 and 12, then it's probably a good idea to keep hitting A until they change it up. This time, we're going to apply the 5 factors when determining the probability of success and the effect they'll have on the round. In this clip, I have a Vandal and I want to peek mid at the start of the round. My teammate also wants to peek, but since he has an op, I'm going to let him peek first and follow up after his peek. Looking at the scoreboard, I see that the Jett has enough money to buy an op. Since a lot of Jetts are oppers, I'm going to assume that she'll be holding mid or short at the start of the round with an op. I know that the Jett isn't having the best of games, judging from earlier experiences and the scoreboard. While this angle isn't the best to peek because it's beneficial for the Jett, I'm going to bank on the assumption that the Jett won't hit her shot. Looking at the abilities, I know that Sova, Skye, and Reyna have ults available. Peeking mid won't put me in any immediate danger from these ults, but I have to be careful just in case. My probability of success is low if Jett has an op, medium if she does not. The effect on the round is still going to be worse than the reward, like in the simplified example. So the optimal decision is not to peek it because it's not worth it. But I'm going to peek it anyway because I'm confident I can out-aim the enemy. The round starts and both oppers miss their first shot. So now we know that the Jett has an op and it's going to be hard to win this duel if I'm on a rifle. However, I decide to peek her because she won't expect me to re-peek this angle, especially since she has an op. It works out this time, but again, this isn't the optimal play. We tried this play again in a later round, and both I and my teammate died to that same jet. This is just a clear example of how suboptimal plays can work, but are not encouraged. Good decision making goes hand in hand with having good game sense. Remember, while the optimal play will have the most chances of success, it doesn't mean that other plays won't work. Decisions are almost always going to be made without complete information, but you can increase the chances of success by thinking about these factors before you make a certain choice. Anyway, that's it for this video. I hope you learned something from it, and if you have any comments or suggestions, I'd love to hear them down below. This is Egwick, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.